Welcome to this bonus episode of Story Power. I accidentally published episode 67 with Teri and Brown last week instead of today, but that was actually serendipitous because Teri's new book, An Enemy Like Me, dropped on January 24th. This conversation was recorded for my Patreon community to promote that book. But in a way, I'm really glad that that accident happened because now she gets double exposure for both books. I hope that you will enjoy this bonus episode. I have read both of her books, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow and An Enemy Like Me, and they are both well worth your time. Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we're passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast in the summer of 2020 at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my friends, family, and social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. My goal was to do the same for my listeners, but as I chatted with my guests throughout the first year, I discovered that their personal stories were the most fascinating thing about each episode. Neil Gaiman says, fairy tales are more than true not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten. I now know that sharing our experiences with others helps us defeat our own dragons. It is our stories that connect us to one another. Let's see what wisdom today's guest has to share with us. Today, I am talking with my friend Teri Brown, Teri M. Brown, who has written this fabulous book that I read called Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. And it's so timely because it's about Ukraine. And my husband just started reading it this week. So Teri, you're going to tell about your new book, but I'm also hoping that you'll tell more about some of your experience of being this author who's award-winning and going out and having all these fun experiences, selling your book. So
yeah, I'd love to.
Oh, good. So tell about your new book though, first.
All right. So my new book is called An Enemy Like Me, and it is a World War II historical fiction, but it's not your traditional World War II. You know, there's a little bit of war in it, but it's mostly about how do you feel about being in war? You know, like what does that do to you? But not even just from a soldier's point of view. I look at it from the soldier, but I also look at it from his wife who's left behind. And then he has a 4-year-old son who's also left behind. And we see it from the 4-year-old's point of view, as well as him as an adult looking back. So we get a lot of experience as to like, what does war do? How does it affect people? And then just to add a little more twist to it, the soldier is a first-generation German American. So his family is very German. He was born in the United States. When he goes to fight in the war, he believes he's going to fight the Japanese, and he ends up fighting in Germany. And that's where the title comes from, An Enemy Like Me, is when he begins to recognize what is an enemy.
Right.
You know, what exactly makes someone an enemy? And it's easy to have an enemy when someone is very different than you are, because you can really focus on those things that make you different. And, you know, if you hyper focus on those and you refuse to allow yourself to see any similarities, you can make them into a monster. You can make them into someone that can be that enemy. But what if there are more similarities than there are differences? Right. Now, how are they the enemy? And then what do you do? And so that's kind of the concept that I really hope that people will explore, is not just in wartime, but in regular life. Not that we usually have enemies per se, but we have all of the isms and the phobias, those people who are the us's and the thems, and we separate ourselves out. That's what we do as people. And there's a reason for it. And it started out as a safety thing, like when we were back in the tribal days, right? You had our tribe and you had their tribe, and you needed the strength of those around you. And so we've always done an us and them, but it's not as valuable in today's world.
Right.
Because really, maybe I'm a little bit of a Pollyanna, but I think most people are good. There are those bad eggs out there. I mean, I believe that. I don't have my head in a hole. I mean, I understand there are bad, wicked people, but generally speaking, and very rarely have in fact, I can't in my mind think of any time where an entire group has been rotten.
Right.
There's rotten people in a group.
Yeah.
There are rotten people maybe who lead a group, but that doesn't make the whole group rotten. And so I hope that through the book, people start exploring that idea of like, what makes an enemy and how can we get past that idea?
Right.
It's conversation. Like you and I were talking, and I'm from North Carolina and you're from Arizona. And let's just say that I've decided that all people from Arizona are horrible people. Okay. This is a mindset I have, and I've made this decision, right?
Yeah.
But then I meet you and we start talking. And I find out that we have things in common. And then we start focusing on those commonalities. And now what do I have to do? Okay, I either have to decide that I can live with cognitive dissonance and like someone from Arizona, despite the fact that all people from Arizona are terrible. Or I can make you an exception to the rule. Okay, all people from Arizona are terrible except for Lucinda. Or I have to change my rule.
Right.
Well, if I meet enough people from Arizona that I like, eventually I have to change my rule, or I have to live with this horrible, like it doesn't make sense. Right. Yeah. So I think that's what we need to do. How do we get rid of all the isms? How do we get rid of all the phobias? Well, you start meeting people one by one until you recognize, wait a minute, that rule that I have in my head that all fill in the blank, or that most fill in the blank are whatever it is, you can't keep doing that because you've now met too many people that don't fit that rule.
Right. Oh,
that's
I love
kind of the
that
conversation that I hope people will start having around this book is, like what makes an enemy, and is that valuable in today's society?
Right. Now, I have a question. So your book comes out in January. What's the drop date?
24th. January
24th. Oh yeah, that's why we're doing this. I'm recording this and doing it in early January. Right. Okay, so I have a question though. Are you getting book club groups already lined up to talk about it?
So I actually have several book clubs that read Sunflowers Beneath the Snow and loved it. And then said, you have another book coming out? Oh, can you come back when we read it?
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't have any actually set in stone yet, but I have several that have said, as soon as the book is out and available, we will set a date, because they want to make sure that their group has enough time to get the book, read the book, enjoy the book, So yeah, I've got several that are, like I said, enjoyed the first one. And so they've said, oh yeah, they want to read the second.
Oh, good. So then they can maybe pre-order the book so that they have it in January when it comes out?
If they're local, I can probably do a pre-order. I really can't pre-order. You can't get it on Amazon early. If I had a local group maybe that wanted to, you can go on Amazon right now and pre-order it. But it won't drop until the 20th.
Right. It doesn't come. Well, yeah, that's what I meant anyway. Yeah. So they can pre-order it. And then when it drops, they get it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's so cool. I love that. I love that concept.
Well, thank you.
Yes, because you're so right. we need to just have conversations with people and be curious about who they are, even though it may seem like they aren't very much like us.
And my husband and I rode across the United States on a tandem bicycle.
Whoa.
So we went from the coast of Oregon to Washington, D.C. We rode 3,102 miles.
Whoa.
And we did that during the summer of 2020. So COVID summer and all the riots and all those other things that were going on. And so it was kind of a little crazy to think that we were kind of out there and very vulnerable with people, right?
Right.
We met the most wonderful people, and they were from all walks of life. They were from people who lived in different places than we did, who had very different experiences, who had all colors of skin, who were many different religions, who were different political leanings, all of the things that should make, like separate us.
Right.
And yet every single time we sat down and started talking with someone, every time we would find similarities. And immediately we would start discussing those similarities. Maybe they've been to the North Carolina beach and that's where we live, and we would start talking about that. Or maybe they rode bikes, or maybe they've recently taken a trip and, went to some of the same places. Or maybe it was amazing the way that you've found even things like, oh, you have children, I have children. And immediately now we have something to talk about because we're both moms.
Right.
And I think that even though we're kind of like, I don't know, primed to find differences, we can turn that around and prime ourselves instead to look for how are we alike?
Right.
Because once you can focus on those commonalities, the differences don't matter quite as much.
Right.
You and I have had a lot of conversations, and there are a lot of things that I do not know about you that could separate us. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know what your religion is. I don't know what your political affiliation is. I don't know a lot of those things that like can tear people apart.
Right.
And do you know what? I don't care.
I know, really.
I don't care what they are because it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because our relationship isn't hinged on those things at all.
Right.
And so what difference should it make? Right. And what you believe doesn't change me. And what I believe doesn't change anything about you. And instead, we can connect on this level of books. We can connect on this level of family. We can connect because that's the connection points.
Right.
And I just feel so strongly that, we've got all these programs and things out there that's supposed to help, like, get rid of racism and sexism and isms and all of those. and it isn't that we shouldn't be talking about it, but the way to get past it is individual one-on-one conversations where people are willing to open up their ears and open up their minds and hear what someone else has to say. And get to know people on this one-on-one basis. And then as you've opened up your world, the isms fall away. They don't mean anything anymore.
Right. I love that. That's so great. So you and I kind of have the same mission. That's why I do Story Power.
Yeah. So, that's why I write. I try to write so that I pull out where people are forced to think about something in a different way than they would have thought about before.
Yeah. So, and stories are so emotional anyway, and I'm taking this course about how to learn in a new way. Super Brain, it's called. But he talks about the way we learn is through our emotions. So that's why stories are so important, because they're all about emotional connection. Well, hopefully you're emotionally connected to the characters. If not, you probably put the book down or you stop watching the movie or something. But
exactly.
It's just not for you. That one's not for you. But yeah, and it doesn't matter what you read or watch, you are learning something. It might be really subtle, but yeah, you're learning something. So tell now about, because I saw that you won an award for Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, but I'd never heard of that award before. So tell about that.
So it's called the International Firebird Book Award.
Whoa.
And what is really cool about this, yeah, ooh, sounds so big, right?
Yeah.
But what is really cool about this award is the lady who started it loves books and authors and everything, but she also has this desire to help women and children who find themselves in shelters.
Oh.
So she takes the money that she gets for, like anytime you go for an award, there's an entry fee and those
Right.
kinds of things.
Mhm.
And she takes that money and she creates pillowcases for these women in these shelters, and then also donates children's books
Oh, cool.
so that these women who find themselves, displaced, usually because of abuse and other things,
Mhm.
have a way of feeling like connected and safe.
Mhm.
And so the fact that I was chosen as first place in historical fiction, which is really exciting, but then I'm also helping in the community,
Right.
is very exciting to me too, because that's something that is like a passion of mine. I love service. I think that whenever you can find a way to serve others, that's a wonderful thing to do. So I feel really good about this award because yes, my book was recognized and I'm helping people at the same time. So
That's so cool. Yeah. Can anybody donate to the award
I
or
suspect so. I don't know enough about it to
oh,
really know, but if you go on, it's Firebird. It's called the Firebird Award, and yeah, just go online and look it up and see. I am sure she has a way. I feel confident that she has a way that people can donate to that.
and how
Um,
oh, I'm sorry. And how
yeah.
did you find out about the award?
So I was probably doing a search. I suspect maybe it was on Readsy or
Oh.
I don't know, and that talked about different awards. And I
Mhm.
was looking up historical fiction and are there any
Mhm.
awards out there, because that's what you do as an author, is you're constantly looking for a way to like elevate your book to the next level. And that was one of them. And so I thought,
Uh-huh.
well, I'm going to give that one a try and see what happens. So
Oh, that's
it was like both. I was hoping to, of course, win an award because I'm an author and that's what authors want. And then on
yes.
the other hand, to be able to do that at the same time that I'm helping someone.
Right.
And I was, for 14 years, I lived in an emotionally abusive relationship.
Mm.
And I was lucky when I got out, I had a place to land. But a lot of people don't. And so I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
really strongly about, that aspect that women who find themselves in these bad relationships, they need a safe place. They
To
need a safe
land.
place.
Yeah.
And they need people who care. So
Yes.
that when they finally find themselves out of these bad situations, that they have people around them that care enough to help in some manner. So
Yes. So have you had any really interesting experiences doing podcasts or talking to book club groups about your first book?
yeah, so I had a she shed experience the other night, which was
Oh,
fun. I've never even been in a she shed before. I can almost not say it. And I live near the beach, and she calls it her she shed by the seashore. And
that
so that was actually a lot of fun because she invited all of the ladies to her house and none of them had seen her she shed at this point. So it was
oh.
kind of like an unveiling, and we're
Oh.
all in there and there was these cushy and fluffy, and it was just so much fun. It was just a lot of fun. So that one was great. And then I had a podcast experience, and this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but it was so amazing. I had to like put lead shoes on to bring myself back down after it was over. So I was on, it was called Progress for Tomorrow. And there were two hosts, and one of them is a poet, and he was talking to me, and he said, question for you, and so I'm getting kind of prepared, like, about my writing style, or, and he said, have you ever considered yourself to be a modern day female version of Ernest Hemingway?
Oh.
And I said, I mean, I was just stunned, right? So I'm not exactly sure how I answered it. I kind of stumbled around for a few minutes, laughed, thank you, that kind of thing. Well, then the other host comes on and said, well, I disagree. I would say she's more of a Mario Puzo, the author of The Godfather.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, never coming down off the ceiling. I'm going to be up here forever. I mean, I don't really, I mean, I think those were wonderful compliments.
Yes.
I felt like they were a little over the top, but still, was that a wonderful experience? That was amazing. That's one of those that, I'll just have to keep in my soul the rest of my life. That I
Right.
had two people at the same time essentially fighting over who I was most like. It was great.
That is great. That's fun. Oh, wow. Well, we haven't been talking very long. Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about like writing and the marketing, I have learned so much. So with
Yes.
Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, it came out on the 25th of January, this past January.
Mhm.
And it was my debut, right? And
Right.
it's going to be published, and I put it out there, and then I sat by my computer and waited. And the book wasn't selling. And I didn't understand why, because it was a good book. Why is it not selling? Well, because I knew nothing about marketing, and I had done nothing to market this book, nothing.
Yes.
So I started out like weeks behind. So the book is already out, and now I'm doing things like finding editorial reviews, and I'm, trying to get people to review it quickly and get it onto Amazon, and all the things I should have done weeks and weeks and weeks before, but didn't know to do. And it's been relatively successful despite the fact that I was so late getting started. I've been on a lot of podcasts, but I learned so much. So when An Enemy Like Me went to the publisher and they were trying to give me a date, I said, when can I have a book in my hand? Okay, so I've got it right now. This is my
cool.
book. Okay, so it's here. And then I said, from the day that I get it, I need at least 3 months, because I don't want to be behind again.
Right.
So what I've done is I've created it's my own term. I don't know that it actually exists, but it's existing for me, and I'm calling it a launch tour. And the launch tour is every day in January and every day in February. I still have a few days to fill in there, but I'm going to have something new come up on the internet. So it will be a podcast, or it will be a book review, or it will be a book spotlight, or it will be a written author interview, or I've got a couple people, but they want me to answer the questions from the character's point of view. And anything that I can do to create a buzz about the book for the 3 weeks leading up to and the 3.5, 4 weeks after.
Right.
To kind of create this buzz. And I'm calling it my book launch tour.
Oh, that's so great.
And it's a lot of fun. And what's great is because I did all of this legwork for Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, most of the people who helped me out with that are like, oh, sure, I'd love to do this with you. So it's been a little easier than, that first time with Sunflowers. It's like pulling teeth, trying to get people to know who you are.
Right.
And I was totally unknown. I mean, who is this chick, and does she even write? Like they knew nothing about me. And so to try to convince people who know nothing about you that you're worth, like, can she talk? If we put her on a podcast, can she even say anything? Is she fluent?
Yes, right.
And so you kind of have to do all that proving. But the second time around, not that it hasn't been a lot of work, because there's a lot of back and forth and trying to figure things out, but it's a different kind of work. Now it's more like polishing. It's okay, so we want to do this together, and now how are we going to do this to make it the most beneficial for both of us, so that we can both get something from it. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun trying to put together this book tour and figure out like what's going to happen each day. And then I'll be curious to see how An Enemy Like Me does over those first couple of weeks versus how Sunflowers did, because Sunflowers did next to nothing. And it isn't that it was a bad book. It's a really actually a very good book. It's just that nobody knew it was there.
Right.
And I didn't know to let anyone know.
And then, but now how is it doing?
So it is selling. I don't know. Most people are unaware. They think that, books sell thousands and thousands and thousands of copies.
Right.
And those books that make the, New York Times bestseller
Mhm.
list or an Oprah book list or,
Mhm.
a Reese Witherspoon, yeah, they sell that kind of copy. But the average book sells 250 copies,
Mhm.
which when I heard that kind of made me feel a little sick. Like I'm
Mhm.
doing all of this work for 250 people to read my book. That's kind of so my book now has sold 1,500 copies,
All right.
which is not, I mean, I want it to sell 10,000, right?
Right.
But
Yes.
1,500 is a whole lot better than 250.
Right.
So I'm beating the average at this point.
Right.
And I'm hoping that with An Enemy Like Me, that I'll get some new readers with An Enemy Like Me who will then go back to get
Right.
Sunflowers because they haven't.
Right.
And, you know, it just takes time. It's something, it's called patience. That's what my husband tells me. I'm not sure about that word, but
Really? Well, I mean, I know kind of what you mean because I didn't really market my book. But someone said, don't worry about it because it's out there now and
yes,
you can always go back and remarket it. And
yes,
when
you
you have,
can.
and somebody else told me when you have two books, it's so much easier.
And I
Um,
think that's true because people are often looking for, well, what will they read next? And if you
right.
have the next book for them,
Hmm.
and I suspect that's even more true than when you have 3 and 4 and 7 and
Oh,
15,
right.
and I'm
Right.
not at that point yet.
Right.
I've got 2, but yeah, I'm hoping that it's kind of like greasing that
Hmm.
wheel, getting it moving, and that those early movements are, you're pushing and pulling and heaving and shoving, but once you
Hmm.
get it kind of moving along, keeping it moving isn't as hard, and then getting it to move faster isn't quite as hard because you've already
Right.
got something going.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I'm hoping
I-
anyway.
So are you working on your third book?
I am, yes. So I don't have a title for it yet. I'm going round and round, but it is about a North Carolina woman in the 1890s.
Oh,
She's a healer.
uh-huh.
And so she lives in the North Carolina mountains, and her
Oh.
techniques of how she helps people are butting up against modern medicine that's kind of like
Mm,
coming into the area.
mm,
And it will be a generational story because I love to write those. And so she is the healer woman of the area. Her
mhm.
daughter becomes a nurse, so actually studies for and becomes a nurse, and is totally disdainful of everything that her mother does because her mother didn't go to school for it.
Mhm.
And it's all folklore and, mumbo jumbo in her mind.
Mhm.
And then the nurse, so second generation, has a daughter, and that daughter is going to be the one who sees the value in both and
Mhm.
helps them understand that, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, that
Right.
there's good in both, and that if we learn from the past and
Mhm.
take the good from the future, then what we end up with is something a whole lot better. So
Well,
that's
that's
kind of the general, but I've only gotten a couple chapters in.
so that sounds really interesting though, because the mother who does the folk healing had to learn it somehow because you
So
can't just
so
yeah,
no, you don't just pop up with it, but I
right.
have her having learned it over, like her mother did things and her grandmother did
Oh,
things, so
right.
she saw. And then I'm going to also bring in North Carolina, we have a rich Cherokee history,
Mm,
Cherokee
mhm,
Indian history.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so I'm going to have her having spent some time with maybe a Cherokee shaman or something, so
Ah.
that she has learned some of the value that he brings. And so hers is kind of a combination of the stuff that she's learned from her grandmother and from other,
Mhm,
women. Most of the time it was women who seemed
mhm,
to know what to do with the herbs and the other things because they didn't have modern medicine. So you
right.
had to kind of learn, well, how are you going to help, your son who's running a fever or whatever. And so
Right.
so the things that she kind of gleaned from her ancestors, as well as the things that she gleaned from the Native Americans in the area. And then,
Oh,
like I said, kind of pit it up against, the modern medicine. And I think that having it be a mother-daughter that feel that way is going to be a good way to kind of get the real
yes.
angst going, because,
Yes.
not only is the daughter who's a nurse upset with this mountain healer, but it's her mother. Come on, mom. You know what I mean? So you can have a lot more angst at it because, here's her mother making her look bad.
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, isn't it kind of interesting that we're sort of going back to that now in some ways?
Right,
Um,
which is one of the reasons I wanted to kind of talk about this idea. I think that so many times in the world, we look at this new stuff that's coming out and we take all the old and we just throw it out the door.
right.
When
Mhm.
really, yes, there's some things that need to be thrown out because what's new is so much better, but not everything needs to go.
Right.
And there's some of the old that has really influenced the new, and you can keep some of that. And so, yet, although we're talking about medicine here, I think that's true of any time that you've got some new
Yes.
technology or new idea or new
Right.
theory or new whatever coming in. Is, do you really have to throw everything else away?
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Because really, modern medicine is fabulous. I wouldn't trade it for anything. My husband right now has brain cancer, and thank goodness for modern medicine. And on
Yes.
the other hand, there's a lot of the healing art kind of thing in terms of meditation and relaxation, and
Mhm.
even just understanding supplements and
Mhm.
what can help your body be stronger for healing and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And when you meld the two together, what you
Mhm.
have is a much broader understanding of how to keep your body healthy,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Because does modern medicine even touch on like nutrition? Very rarely. I mean, you might get, this is how many calories you should eat and definitely add some
Mhm.
proteins, but they don't really talk about nutritional counseling very much.
Mhm.
And yet there's so much to that. And
Mhm.
people years and years ago knew that.
Mhm.
And maybe
Yes.
they didn't know it like they wrote it in a book, but they knew it because they ate the way their mothers ate, who ate the
Yeah.
way their mothers ate. And they just
Mhm.
knew that this is how you combined your foods to be healthy. And
Mhm.
we've lost that, and it's coming back now. And so I
Mhm.
think it's just very interesting, the idea that, you know, like I said, you've got something new and it's great and it's grand, but it doesn't necessarily mean everything that you did before was wrong.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Well, I'm I keep sending prayers for your husband.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
hope that he's gonna pull through.
Yeah,
Yes.
it has been a journey, that is for sure.
Oh
So
my goodness, that's so difficult.
yeah, it
Uh,
was, and so unexpected.
Oh,
Bruce is an
yes.
extremely healthy individual who, he goes out and he gets more done in a day than most people get done in a week. And
Mhm.
he's busy and he's healthy and he's active and he's fit. And one evening, I thought he was having a stroke because all of a sudden he couldn't talk. And it turned out that it was a seizure.
Mhm.
And when they did an MRI, because they were sure it was a stroke, and when they did an MRI, they found a tumor. And it was
Mm.
just like totally rocked our world because it was not what we expected,
Oh,
not what
wow,
we
yeah.
expected at all.
Right.
And so yeah, it's been a really incredible journey, and kind of interesting that I had this idea for a book before going through this journey.
Yes.
And now we're going through this journey, and it's like I think I'll be able to use not necessarily the experiences we're having, because we're so far beyond 1890 that it would be very
Right.
difficult. But I
Right.
think that I can use some of the emotional angst that
Mhm.
comes with having someone you love be ill
Oh,
and not
yes.
having all the answers and not knowing where you're supposed to turn, and having two different camps that have two different ideas, and now you're
Yeah.
trying to make a decision as to, well, which one do we follow. So I'll
Right.
be able to use some of the experience in terms of the emotional, how you said with stories and we connect emotionally.
Right.
So I think that I'll be able to use some of those emotional things and get them into this book. So
Oh, that's so great. So we'll have to do this again when that book comes out.
absolutely. I'll go ahead and pencil you in.
Okay, great. Yes, me too. Well, we keep in contact with each other.
Yes, we do.
Pretty
We do.
well. Yes. So, oh, Teri, I am so excited that we got to talk. And
So am I.
best wishes to you and your family and your husband.
Thank you.
And yeah, modern medicine is pretty. My brother-in-law had cancer and it was in his tongue or his mouth or something, but he is cancer-free now. And so, yeah,
Like I said, I would never say that we don't want modern medicine,
right.
because some of the things that they can do now and understand and that they
Mhm.
didn't understand before have saved my husband's life, right?
Yes.
I mean, what would they have done 100 years ago?
Right.
Nothing,
Exactly.
nothing, right? So modern medicine is amazing, but
Yes.
there are things that have been around for centuries that did help. And there's no reason why you can't find a way to combine
Right.
both, and I feel that way about, so modern technology has us where we're doing this, right?
Right.
We're on this,
Yes.
we're on this podcast. I can see you, you can see me. We
Right.
don't live anywhere close to one another. We probably would have never met any other way, right?
Right.
So this is
Yes.
fantastic, but I don't think that it takes the place of a one-on-one conversation over coffee.
Yeah, because we aren't exchanging. I mean, there's a little bit of energy exchange, but not like when you're in the same room with someone. Yeah.
Not the same. It's not the same. And
Yeah.
so, so it's true with anything. And like, I love the idea that my books can be on a Kindle.
Right.
Right? Isn't
Uh-huh.
that fabulous?
Mhm.
But I don't think that's ever going to get rid of a book.
Oh no. Oh no.
Because
Yeah.
there's value to having it in your hand too.
Mhm.
So I just think that, I've heard, the tales of, oh, well, books are dying, libraries are going to be gone, everything is going to go digital. Well,
Mm-mm.
I don't believe that
No. No.
any more than, I mean, look now at the people who've said there will never be any more albums.
Right.
And there are music albums now, and there are people who've gone back to vinyl, and that's
Right.
what they want, and that's what they use. And so, I just think, yeah, it's great that we have these new things that come out, how fantastic, but let's be a little more selective in what we throw out the door and call it old-fashioned,
Right.
because you'll find that a lot of that old-fashioned stuff ends up sneaking back in later.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. So tell the names of your books again for our listeners and watchers.
All right. So the new one coming out is An Enemy Like Me.
Mhm.
It's a historical fiction World War II setting.
Mhm.
And then my debut is Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. It's also a historical fiction, and it's set in Ukraine, and it follows 3 generations of Ukrainian women.
Oh, fantastic. And they can both be found on Amazon. Although An Enemy Like Me is just for pre-order as we are recording. So,
Right. But it will be available as of January 24th.
mhm.
So you can pre-order now.
2023.
2023.
Uh-huh.
And they're also on Barnes and Noble. You can go,
Good.
if
Yeah.
you're in the United States, you can go to my website, which is my name, Teri M. Brown, and that's Teri with just one R. And you can go there and I'll send you a signed copy. So that's another way of getting the book. And I think that's on quite a few other.
It's probably on Apple. My husband and I are going to download you sent me a pre copy of it.
Yes.
And sometimes I have to have my tech guy help me out with that. But it's probably also on iBooks. Well, it used to be called iBooks. I think it's just called Books now. The Apple book.
I suspect that's true. And I
Yeah.
think that it's also, there's a Canadian one like Kobo or something.
Oh, right. Oh,
I think it's
yes.
on that. Is it
Yes.
Kobo? I think that's the name of it.
I think you're
And
right. Mhm.
then and then there are a couple of other that are kind of the online bookstores that are much smaller, but
Mhm.
they can also get it. So
Mhm.
yeah, pretty much if you want
Yes.
it, you can find it.
Well, the reason I'm doing it, I've started to go through my books because almost every room in our house has bookshelves, and we're starting to downsize now. And it's like, oh, I have to get rid of some of these books. So I've at one point I didn't even have any more bookshelf space
I
for
know that
physical
feeling.
books. For physical books. So yeah, that's why I just do and plus I like reading it. I my nighttime ritual is to read right before I go to sleep, and it's just easy to read it on my iPad. So
It is. And then when you fall asleep, you don't have to turn out the lights or anything else because you can have it all set and just, yeah.
yes, the lights can be out, right? And it can be a black with white.
Yes.
Yeah, I like
Yes.
that.
That's what my husband does. He reads at night before he goes to sleep. Same
Yes.
thing. So
Yes. Oh, Terry, this has been so fun. So stick
it has
around
been
because
wonderful.
I want to talk to you after we
Okay.
stop recording, but thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Before I go, I'd like to give a big shout out to Podmatch, which I call a dating service for podcasters. Since I joined their platform, I have met so many wonderful people from all over the world, and they make the matches so easy that if you are a podcaster or you have a message that you want to share, you might want to consider checking them out. The affiliate link is at the bottom of my show notes on my website at Sage-Woman Chronicles at sagewoman.life. Part of what I love about them is that they promote civil conversations, and can't we use that right now? So if you check them out, tell them Lucinda sent you. I'd also like to invite you to my Patreon community, where we will have chats with authors or creators. We'll have member chats about the stories that they love, and occasionally we'll have extra episodes or uncut episodes of Story Power. So please go check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/storypower without the hyphen, all one word. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. You'll find the show notes for this episode at my website, Sage Woman Chronicles at sagewoman.life. You can leave a comment there. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.